Maxim. Was there any question that we left with yesterday, or we were good? We shall continue then. There are other things too which present themselves in a modified form and they are dealt with in a different way. It is obvious that when a thing made of clay comes before us, we take a different view of it, and our liking for it is increased in comparison to the mass of clay which is which it is made up of. Similarly, when a man approaches God after proper making of himself, he takes a different view of him. So this is one fundamental thing that he is saying, that our view of God evolves as we progress through meditation. As we progress through our spiritual journey, our view of God changes. You remember a few other things I told you? There are about 8 or 9 things, the view of which will keep changing as we progress. What are the 8 or 9 things? Each one can say 1 or 2 things. Obviously, silence is not one of the things. See, the way that we view our body changes. The way that we view our mind changes. The way that we view our soul changes. The way that we view nature changes. The way that we view God changes. The way that we view life changes. The way that we actually interact with others in life changes. The way that we look at master changes. The way that we look at reality changes. Now, each of these things is a dynamic thing. Now, the question comes, till when will they change? Till you reach a fundamental stage where beyond which you cannot go and get further answer on that particular topic. Till that time, it changes. And the beauty of spirituality is that anybody who approaches spirituality, as they progress, irrespective of where they start, as far as these issues are concerned, they will all come to the same conclusion in the end. Does it make sense? Each one of us might start with a different view of God. It doesn't matter. But ultimately, as we progress and reach the higher stages, we all will start kind of aligning in our thought process. Each one of us can think of life as different from different perspectives. But as we progress in spirituality, we all come to the same conclusion. Okay, life is this for this purpose only. There's no other purpose for life. In other words, however incongruent our opinions are at the start of the journey, as we progress, we all come to the same path or same kind of understanding about these aspects. Does it make sense? Again, your view of the Guru also changes as you progress. The way that we view the master or the guru at the first point is different from the fifth point. It is different from the eighth point. It is different further at the 11th point and then in the central region. The way that we view the guru and the role of the guru also keeps evolving as we journey through the spiritual progress or the spiritual path. So I'll pause here for a minute. So just take some time to assimilate what we have discussed. Of these 7 or 8 things that we spoke about, each one of us can actually start with a different perspective, but eventually all of us will start thinking alike. In other words, our thinking will start aligning. Now, a person who is evolved spiritually will have definitive answers for each of these questions. In other words, they will not have any confusion in their mind. What is this body meant for? or our view of the body. Why is it there? And what is its purpose? That will evolve to such an extent that all of us will actually agree that this is the reason why the body is given to us. Similarly, this is the reason why the mind is given to us. This is the reason why the soul has come down. Each one of us will work it out. This is what is the purpose. And then sometimes, if we are very sensitive, we will also get to know what are the samskars from the past and why is that we are here and what is it that we need to do in this life to be able to evolve to the next level. It becomes clear. Now, many people go and pay money to do past life regression analysis to get to know what were they in the past life. Now, look at the fallacy. They are paying more attention and more of their resources for the past to know about the past. Now, if they actually utilize the same time and resources to actually make the present, the future will definitely be better than what it is. Right? So we are all happy to look back. Very few people are happy to look forward. And Bharat and Gopal Krishna will say, that is what we are doing. We are looking forward. To what they will not say. We are looking forward, sir. Right? Now, one point after we did this analysis, if you look at all the indriyas, the senses, God has given all of them in the front only. Most of them. Majority of the indriyas are there in the front only. You don't have any indriya at the back. And why is that? The reason is God does not want you to look back all the time. He wants you to use the indriyas and look forward. Even the Navatvaras that we talk about. What are the Navatvaras?
Nose, ears, mouth, 5 was 5, 7, 8. Yeah, those are one.
You finished 9, huh? You
Uh,
counted 9, but you did not finish 9.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Our urinary bladder 1, the anus 1, 7.
ಏನು ಭರತ್ ಹೇಳು ನೀನು.
ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಸರ್.
ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ವಾ? ನವದ್ವಾರಗಳು ಅಂತ ಕರೀತಾರೆ.
Even eyes also?
Correct.
Nine.
So there are 7 here. So 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, mouth, 2 ears, 7. Then the passage for the urinary outlet and the feces outlet. Even if you should look at the Navadvaras, most of them are in the front or the side. Except for the anal outlet, which could be considered as below or slightly behind. Except for that, everything else is in the front or the side only. Majority are in the front, in fact. So, in other words, God wants you to direct your energy to looking forward, not looking back all the time. So, our job is to make the things better in the present so that the future can automatically evolve to be better than what it is. That is what we are doing. Okay. So, this came in the context of what we read here. Similarly, when the man approaches God after proper making of himself, he takes a different view of him. So, as man evolves, human beings evolve. They take a different view of many things that they pass through or that they possess or that they're given. So just repeat. ಎಲ್ಲ ಎರಡೆರಡು ರಿಪೀಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಏನೇನೆಲ್ಲ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ವಾಟ್ ಆರ್ ದ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ದಟ್ ವಿ ದ ಪರ್ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಟ್ ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ಅಲ್ಟಿಮೇಟ್ಲಿ ಟು ಸ್ಟೆಬಿಲೈಸ್ ಅಟ್ ದಟ್ ಒನ್ ಪರ್ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಆಲ್ ಆಫ್ us will agree eventually.
Body, mind, soul, uh, nature, master, reality. 6.
ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಇವರಿಬ್ರು ಇನ್ನೂ ಎದ್ದೇ ಇಲ್ಲ ನಿದ್ದೆಯಿಂದ.
God, God, and looking at others.
Huh?
Looking at others.
Looking at others. So interpersonal interactions.
8 ಆಯ್ತು.
Huh?
8 ಆಯ್ತು.
8 ಆಯ್ತಾ? 9 ಅಂತಾನೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೀಗ. 8 or 9 ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದೆ ನಾನು. So 3 individual, 3 nature. So God, you left life. Our perspective of life changes as we progress in spirituality.
But it's not an object.
Sorry?
Not an object.
Not an object. What do you mean?
I thought we were talking specifically about an entity or something like that. But
No, God is also not an object. Reality is also not an object. They're all abstracts. So in other words, we have to move from the so-called concrete. Body is the most concrete of them all. From the concrete, we gradually move towards abstraction. And even in those abstractions, we come to the same conclusion, generally. Anyway, so these 8 to 9 things, just remember, that's how we evolve. So one of the ways of actually knowing that we are evolving is our view of these things static or is it changing as we progress? That's something that we have to look at. In other words, if you are holding to the same view of each of these things, even after 5 to 10 years of practice, definitely there is some error. When we say that the consciousness is becoming subtle, what do we mean by that in terms of concreteness and the abstraction ability of the mind? When the consciousness becomes subtle, the mind will naturally tend towards abstraction. It does not like concrete things. It wants to go and soar high in the sky of abstraction. That is what it wants. That is what it means to say the consciousness is now becoming more subtle. The crudest example of that is in the first point itself, we are supposed to let go of rigidity and we are supposed to become a bit more flexible. So when the consciousness becomes a bit subtle in the first point, we become more accommodative of other people's views. We might have our view. However, we are also accepting of other people's view, which might be different from others. In other words, when we say that you are very rigid, we say that you are very concrete. When you are going towards abstraction, your ability to accept the opinion of others also becomes possible. When we are established in concreteness, there is an aspect of rigidity in us. When we are established in the state of abstraction, we become more flexible and we become more accepting of other people's views. This is what happens. Does it make sense? And that is where the work towards abstraction starts. Science wants you to look at everything in concreteness. Spirituality wants you to look at everything in the concept of abstraction. You start from, for example, the body is concrete, but the mind is abstract. The soul is even more abstract. God or reality is even more abstract. The more you want to move towards abstraction, what you require is subtlety of the consciousness. Without the subtlety of the consciousness, you cannot move towards abstraction. Does it make sense? They both are related. To the extent that the consciousness becomes subtle, to that extent we can actually dwell at the higher planes of abstraction. Everyone is very serious today. What has happened? Gopal Krishna is also very serious. Our Bharat is also very serious. And strange enough, Sudha sister is also serious. Normally, irrespective of what other people are doing, Sudha sister is smiling. Is it? Gopal Krishna was saying yesterday that some of the concepts are just touching the surface and then some are going inside, some are just bouncing off the surface. So I was just telling that you have made your surface too smooth. That's why it's bouncing. It's not sticking. All abstracts. But our journey itself is towards abstraction. At the highest level, when we talk about reality or God, even the concept of God as it evolves, it becomes more and more abstract. It becomes so abstract that to the extent that ultimately we find ourselves non existent. To that extent, it becomes abstract. It becomes abstract to the extent that we ourselves subtract from it. That is what happens in the end. Who is there for what? This is the question you will ask in the end. What was I doing all this time? Anyway, so this goes to explain that we should affect our making of ourselves as may help us to become the cynosure of his eyes. We have to mold ourselves in such a way that God should fix his eyes on us. And one thing I can guarantee you, if God fixes eyes on you or anyone, they'll undergo a lot of trouble. Because all the samskaras will start coming to bhoga. So life will be like there will be a huge upheaval. So it's not that easy. And that's why to become the cynosure of his eyes, you have to be, what do you say, courageous. You have to be dependent. You have to be surrendered. Then, even if you become the cynosure of his eyes, you will be able to tolerate it and go through that process. Otherwise, we all want to be in our comfort zone. Pull the rug close. So my daughter was saying that suddenly, uh, someday when I was actually trying to meditate in the midnight, she heard the noise and she was a bit scared. Who is walking or who is making noise in the midnight? And you know what was the solution? The solution is pull the rug on your head and close as if the whole world does not exist. That's what she said. Then I felt better. I did not want to open the door also. I just pulled my rug and then whatever it is, let it be there. I, that's how generally we are. We are like that only. Forget about the coming in front of him. We don't we don't want to be the cynosure of his eyes. We don't want to even come in front of him. Because the moment you come in front of him, things will start happening. Lot of samskaras will come to the bhoga and then it causes a lot of changes in our life. So we are not that ready. So for us, we want to go from one comfort zone to another comfort zone. Our journey is not, for example, a parivrajaka. Parivrajaka is somebody who actually goes around the town to tell people about their experience of reality. They have a message to give to the masses. They are called as parivrajaka. And their message is simple. Whatever is the reality that they, to the extent that they have realized the reality, to that extent they'll give the message to the masses as this is the highest reality. Okay? And you remember Daji's story, Heartfulness Way? He ran away from house. How long was he away? Not even half a day. ಭರತ್ ಎಷ್ಟೊತ್ತಿದ್ರು ಮನೆ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಓಡೋಗಿ ನಾನು ಓಡೋಗ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಜಗತ್ತಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಸಾರ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ
4 hours.
4 hours ಅಲ್ಲ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಾ ಕೊಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ ದಾಜಿ ಪಾಪ ನಿನಗೇನು ಕೊಟ್ಟರೆ ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಕಟ್ಟು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾನೆ ಗೋಪಾಲಕೃಷ್ಣ 12 hours ನೀನು 4 hours ಇನ್ಯಾರನ್ನು ಮಧ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳ್ತೀರಾ ನಂಬರ್ 6 hours. So quarter of a day. In other words, he ran away from house at the time of after lunch, and then he was home for the dinner. Joshua Palak immediately laughs. Oh, I thought you should be away for a few days. You fellow came back in 6 hours. Anyway,
Correct.
but the point is, for a parivrajaka, they have a message to give to the world and masses. And Daji writes in Heartfulness Way that I did not have any message. Unlike Vivekananda, I did not have any message to give. In other words, you can become a parivrajaka only if you have a message to give to the masses, not otherwise. ಏನು ಕೇಳಬೇಕಿತ್ತ ಭರತ್
Yes, you said that when God fixes eyes on someone, he faces a lot of trouble. That should happen in any of the life. If
it
if you
happens in
want
a
to go to
slow
God,
it happens in a slow way, but when God fixes his eyes on us, it happens at a very fast rate. That's all. When God fixes eyes on us, he wants us to go back to his realm, but we are not ready. We are carrying a lot of samskaras. So his job is to make us more purer or purified at a faster rate so that it becomes possible for us to be able to go to his abode. That is what happens. Otherwise, when left to us, we only are happy to work with nature. We are happy to work with nature. Nature will say, okay, I'll only remove one samskaras at a time. You also will say, okay, I'm happy with that. You do whatever you want. But when you fix the God's eyes gets fixed on us, he is the maker of nature. He'll override nature and say that this fellow needs to come back to me. Now fast track his progress. So lot of samskaras come to the surface, and that will take us out of the comfort zone. The comfort zone is that we have developed with nature, one samskara at a time, to come into bhoga, not more than that. Only one at a time.
but
See
suppose
how we
if
have
I
actually made understanding with nature also. You don't trouble me, I will not trouble you. You scratch my back, I'll also scratch your back. That's what we have come to understanding with nature. That is why when you actually come to Sahaj Marg, it's a big difference. Because now the bhoga of your samskaras or the clearance of the samskaras now gather space. Remember, without the samskaras being removed, you will not have access to the higher realms of divine regions. You will not be able to go there. So the samskaras have to be removed. So Gopal Krishna, tell about what did you feel yesterday in the sitting, after the sitting? And that's an indication of what is happening to our samskaras.
Even in the sitting and after sitting is full of irritation, rage, discomfort, restlessness. Basically.
Did you hear anything?
So I just said the whole sitting and the time moment after that was irritating, restlessness, discomfort, rage.
So we had not left any spare chairs. Otherwise, we were wondering what he would do with the rage during the meditation. So we thought that next time around we should be more careful. And while going back, we gave him more chairs to carry so that we are protected from the rage. You remember that sentence from Heartfulness Way? Daji writes, when somebody writes, I've had a very disturbing session of meditation, then that's a wonderful session of meditation. Why is that?
Because a lot of things are cleaned.
So, lot of samskaras are removed from your system. And when lot more samskaras are removed from your system, rather than feeling very nice and settled, you will pass through a phase where you feel very intensely restless. Now, don't sit for next session of meditation hoping that it will be of restlessness. Oh, this is what is going to be there. Let me become restless. If I'm not feeling restlessness from inside, I'll start making movements of the body to feel restless. That will be artificial. It just has to happen by itself. You sit for meditation normally, but then when you do feel intensely restless, that means that session of meditation, lot of cleaning has taken place. So now, when God's eyes becomes fixed on us, in a way, you can say, correlating these two things, when God's eyes gets fixed on us, we have many samskaras removed at a faster pace. When we undertake or when we come into Sahaj Marga, in a way, God's eyes are fixed on you now to a certain extent. So samskaras will definitely be removed. But the beauty is that unlike the samskaras where we have to undergo the bhoga, many of the samskaras are removed in our system where we don't need to undergo the bhoga of it. It is just cleaned off. And all that you feel is some degree of restlessness during the sitting. Otherwise, you don't need to undergo the bhoga of those samskaras which are removed. That's the beauty of the system. Okay. So these dealings of nature we have to copy and apply in our daily life. In other words, when suddenly he says this dealing of nature, we have to look at this goes to explain that we should effect such a making of ourselves as may help us to become the cynosure of his eyes. This dealing of nature we have to copy and apply in our daily life. That's exactly what Babuji has done by incorporating the cleaning method in our system. What is nature doing? At the end of the day, nature is doing only one job. It is actually trying to purify everything that is in existence and keep it in that state. That is all that the nature's role is. Purify everything in nature, everything that is there in existence. So, for example, we build lot of cities as part of our civilization progress. Then eventually, nature will purify it. Once the civilization goes, all those things will go back to nature as it was in the past. So those areas which were once thriving cities now gradually turn into deserts or forests. Those areas which are now forests or deserts will gradually turn into cities. So this cycle between the nature is always ongoing. Whenever there is increased human activity, they convert the forest and the desert into cities. Whenever the human activity decreases, the cities will go back to nature as a desert or a forest, back to itself. earlier state. So you have a lot of our historical places where there was once thriving civilization, thriving cities. Now they've all disappeared. So this is the purpose of nature. The nature uses its mechanism to clean everything in existence, to make everything purer in existence. That's how it wants to keep things in itself. We are part of nature also, but we have the ability to go beyond nature also. That's the specialty of a human being. That we are part of nature, but we have got an inherent capacity to go beyond nature also, which other things in existence do not have. Other things in existence are just part of the nature. Okay, so I'll stop here. We still haven't finished the ninth maxim. We'll continue tomorrow. Any questions you can ask? Ganesh, I want to ask some question. There are two things that most of the lecturers say when you don't ask any question. What is it?
Either you have understood nothing or everything.
So I don't know which one to make out now. No. The fact that the answer to that question is also silence makes it even more exciting. See, maxims. Remember the first thing that we read about maxims? Babaji says maxims were written in a very high state of superconsciousness. Right? So sometimes to make sense of what we read and relate to what Babaji is actually trying to get to, or the perspective that with which he is actually writing, sometimes can be a bit challenging. See, suppose somebody is actually explaining some things from this level of abstraction, and we are at this level of concreteness. Trying to bridge this gap is a real challenge. That's one of the challenges with the 10 maxims, where it is written from a very high level of super consciousness, which means to say a very high level of abstraction. But then when we read it, we are supposed to relate to it from our level of abstraction or our level of concreteness. That's the challenge that we face when we read the 10 maxims. Okay, there are two books like that, 10 maxims and the efficacy of Raj Yoga. These two books were written in a very high state of super consciousness. And you remember, I think in one of the readings, somebody pointed out that this book is not for novices. This book is for somebody who has evolved spiritually to a certain extent. You remember that? So that's one of the reasons why you were all silent when I asked to ask some questions. Interestingly, when we were talking about certain things yesterday, Ganeshan messaged me saying that there are a lot of questions. That's why I asked him today, do you have any questions at the start of the session?
Yeah, that was not related to Maxim 9, that's why I kept quiet. Yeah, in the Maxim 9 itself, he says we get power from our thought, right? Normally we say that thought takes power from us. What is the difference in between this?
In a way, it means both the same. The thought gets power from us only. We are the givers of power. That's why you remember when during the session of meditation, you might get a lot of thoughts. But if you don't go behind thoughts, it automatically decreases in its impact. In other words, when the thoughts rise up and we actually pay attention to it, we are energizing it, we are making it more powerful, and then it actually starts showing up in action. Now, what Babuji is now writing in this maxim is that how do the thoughts rise up at all? If it has to rise up, we say that the thoughts arise in the mind. That is what we say. We don't say the thoughts descend in the mind. Right?
Correct.
No. The thoughts which is related to samskaras arises in the mind. The thoughts which is related to divine knowledge descends in the mind. They are also thoughts. These are also thoughts. Now, if you look at what Babuji said, he said about the thoughts in the ninth maxim that thought has power. If it does not have power, how can it actually rise from the bottom of where it is settled to the surface of the mind, to the conscious mind? So, in that particular context, he's saying that thought has power. But then, even that power, we only have given it. That power we don't give consciously through attention. That power is given in the subconscious mind without the need for attention. All the samskaras which are there in the subconscious mind are always drawing some energy from this from the uh, consciousness. There is energy flowing in the consciousness which is coming from the soul, and the samskaras in the subconsciousness actually attach and draw energy from that particular consciousness, energy which is flowing in the consciousness. So, to some extent, for the samskaras to rise up to the conscious mind level, they need to have some power. Without that power, it cannot rise up. Otherwise, it will be there at the bottom. In that context, the Babaji is saying that that thoughts has power. We have already given it at the subconscious level. However, when we say that we give power to the thought, we give power to the thought by paying attention to the thought. So there are two aspects of it. One power which helps the thought to rise up from the bottom of the subconscious to the conscious mind level. Second aspect, where when it comes to the conscious mind level, we pay attention to it and we energize it. That's the power that we add to the thought. So two levels. So in the first part, you can say that thought already has power, which is correct. In the second part, the thought is given power. That's also correct. Okay. So that's interesting that you said that it's not related to nine maxims, and then you asked a question related to nine maxims.
No, the one which I messaged you was not related to ninth, I said.
Yeah, but then when I asked you to ask the question, you said that it's not related to ninth maxim, but I'm going to ask this question. This is what Babu just said in the ninth maxim. Can you
No,
see?
before this, you mentioned the beginning of the ninth maxim. Then I suddenly recalled that question which I read. So I asked about nine.
This is how our subconscious mind and the conscious mind might not be in tandem. There could be one process going on at one level, there's another process going on at another level. And we seamlessly move between these two. I don't know, Bharat. ಇವತ್ತು ಭರತ್ ಪೂರ್ತಿ ಸೈಲೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಭರತ್ ಏನು ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಕೇಳಿಲ್ಲ ಇವತ್ತು.
I had one question when we started
Well,
reading book.
now Bharat's subconscious mind is now started working.
No, I have this question when we started reading book. When it is very funny when Babuji says God is very easy. Why he wrote such big books which are difficult to understand?
God is really simple. But in order to reach God who is simple, we have to get over the complexities of the mind. In order to get over the complexities of the mind, you have to read big books. To put it mathematically, minus into minus is plus. So the complexities of the mind is negated by the complexities of the book, and then you become simple. Does it make sense? The mind, we have trained the mind to be complex. And now suddenly if you tell the mind, you now do need to be simple, the mind will rebel against you. Okay. Gopal Krishna says, no, everyone thinks like that only. My mind is like that only. If the mind is so simple, what was the reason that you felt restless yesterday in the sittings? So there are many aspects of your mind that you are not even aware of. So at one level, you might feel that my mind is very simple. But on the other hand, your experience indicates that it's so complex. Does it make sense? So the mind, we have trained it to be complex. Now, how to tame a complex mind? Give it the things which are more complex. At some point of time, the mind will get tired of trying to solve the complex things. It will shed its complexity and then keep quiet. Then the mind will come to its natural state of simplicity. That's all that happens. And
Yeah, that
anyway, this is a question that you need to have with you. When you catch up with Babuji, ask him, what is it that you are doing? You have put us in this muddle and we don't know what to do. Kelri Ganeshan.
that was the exact another question. The role of the mind. What I have observed is, if I do, I'll give an example. Like you have this Candy Crush, right? This game
Correct.
in mobile. When you play that Candy Crush, uh, this happened very long back, not recently. Um, After a few minutes of playing it, I closed my eyes. What I played and what came into my mind was completely different. I know that what I played is not this, but what my mind showcased or focused it is completely different. It created its own version. Like at that moment, I was little, like shaken up, saying that no, like I gave an example, right? If we put a seed, it is becoming a tree.
Correct.
Now, if that is the case, our whole objective is to overcome the mind, right? We have to cross the mind region and come. So, what is the solution for this? Was my question.
You utilize the power of the mind to get over the mind. That's the solution. When you try to artificially suppress the mind, it's going to rebel. So the mind has the capacity to think. The mind has the capacity to decide. We utilize all these capabilities of the mind in a different realm, in a different direction. That's all. That's all that we do. We want to keep the mind active in the direction of spirituality, not in the direction of materiality. That's all. We just change the direction. The thing is, when the mind is direction is changed, the mind comes under the influence of heart, which is more subtler. In the context of materiality, mind is more subtler and the materiality is more grosser. When the mind goes towards materiality, it becomes even more grosser. That is what happens. But when the mind is made to go towards the heart, which is more subtler, the mind becomes more subtle. There is one fundamental rule of nature that the mind takes the nature of the things that you actually focus it on. If you focus the mind on the spirituality, it becomes subtler. because it's take the nature of the things that it is focused on. When you turn the mind in the direction of materiality, it becomes more grosser. Now, as and when it becomes subtler, these aspects of the mind also evolve. The thinking will evolve, the ego will evolve, the consciousness will evolve. So the manas, buddhi, chitta, ahankar will evolve to make it capable of grasping the subtler divine knowledge. The mind at a certain level is capable of picking knowledge from the material things. But the same mind, when it goes in the direction of subtlety, it now becomes metamorphosized into something more subtler, which is now capable of catching the divine knowledge. That's what happens. So we don't actually suppress our mind in our system. We make use of the mind for the right purpose by molding it, by regulating it, by disciplining it. That is what we do. And the discipline, molding, and the regulation occurs automatically by allowing the mind to go in the direction of spirituality rather than go in the direction of materiality. That's all that we do. That's why we meditate. When we meditate, we bring the attention of the mind on the heart. And when the attention of the mind is fixed on the heart, the mind will start coming under the influence of the heart. Then gradually its tendencies are molded in the right direction. That's all that happens. Okay?
So our basic principle is we have to balance the life of materiality and spirituality, right? Like a bird of two wings. So are we not making a mind go towards a little bit of materiality and go towards a little bit of, are we not confusing the mind functional?
No. When you take the mind towards subtlety in meditation, what happens is when you come out of it, the mind has actually become even more powerful tool. And now the same powerful mind, which has been made powerful by the process of meditation and spirituality, is now used for material purpose. In other words, it makes our life easier to lead in material realm because the mind is more powerful. When the mind is less powerful, the life that we lead in the material realm is difficult, is very tedious, is very cumbersome, very chaotic. It doesn't make sense. In the context of the mind becoming more subtler and powerful, all of these things will become easier for us. So, in other words, the journey towards spirituality actually makes your journey in material life also easier. So, you are not confusing the mind. By making the mind more powerful and subtler, you are actually utilizing more aspects of the mind, more power of the mind than what you were able to do in the past, and that makes life easier for us. Okay. So Daji gives that example in a heartfulness way that suppose you have a capability to have intuition that this particular venture is not going to work out down the line. Don't you think you save time? Rather than putting 3 years of effort into that, making that business venture work out. If you have that feeling and you are able to catch that feeling from the heart that this is not going to work out, you're going to save 3 years of time and effort. Likewise, when people go to look for the bride, they immediately recognize this is not one for them. Don't you think it is going to save their time? Otherwise, they'll be behind that particular process and it might not work out in the end. When the mind becomes more powerful and subtle, it can catch the signals from the heart. And the signals from the heart can also be used to mold our life. That actually saves the time. That's why Daji says that the one who has the least amount of time is the one who should meditate the most. Because even 5 minutes of meditation is going to make a mind more powerful than what it is at present.
Then what it is crossing the mind? Then what does it mean?
Mind has an origin. As of now, at a certain level, we don't have no clue where it is coming from. When we become more and more subtle, we reach that stage where we see where the mind is coming from, the origin of the mind. And then we realize that even if the mind goes back to its, merges back into its origin, we still exist. At that time, we don't bother too much about the mind or its content. By that time, the content of the mind would have been emptied mostly. The mind merges back into its origin, but then we will stabilize in our original existence. That is our true self. Our true self is beyond the mind. The mind merges back into its origin. The individual mind merges back into its origin. Okay. Anyway, the same question, I don't know. Even one other person asked the same question yesterday. That why should we read so many things? Don't you think it's going to color our experience? Don't you think we are going to hallucinate our experience? So we answered that question. So I will request Gopal Krishna to answer that question tomorrow morning. The answer that we gave to this particular thing, that we if we read the book, that is does not color our experience in meditation. Answer is no, it will not color. So we shall talk about it tomorrow. And that recording I have not yet uploaded, Gopal Krishna. Okay, I'll upload it sometime today. Okay, coming up to 7:30, we will catch up again later on. Thanks for your time. Okay, namaste. Have a nice day.
Thank you,
Thank
brother.
you.
Okay, bye, sister.
Thank you.